Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Labour Zoom meeting this week, our virtual online surgery. So I'm Gaynor, Councillor for North Town, and just introduce my colleagues who are here with us today. So if we start with Cherrywood.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Guinness from Cherrywood Ward.
Morning there, I'm Clive Grattan from Cherrywood Ward.
And Wellington.
Morning, Councillor Martin from Wellington Ward.
And Aldershot Park.
Hello, I'm Terry Bridgeman from Aldershot Park.
And finally, North Town.
Keith Dibble, fellow councillor with you, Gaynor, North Town Ward.
Okay, thanks. And Nadia, I believe that you have some information for us on everything that's been going on in the town centre now that the shops have started to reopen.
Yeah, so the shops opened on Monday in the town centres, and it's going a bit, not going, sorry, just a second. I'm getting distracted here.
It's not the cat, is it?
Sorry?
Not the cat, is it?
No, not the cat, not the dog. Yeah, so there's a few things in place, such as markings on the floor, on the windows, in all the shops in the town centre. We have town centre ambassadors in the town centres, and they are keeping the customers in line, point them in the right directions, telling them which shops are open. Thursday was the market stall. That didn't go too well because people were queuing for the fruit and veg stall on Wellington Street, and it caused a few issues because it was merged with the Lidl queue. The nearest public toilet in the town centre is actually Morrison's, which people are not happy about.
No, I think that's really a problem because you have people going into town who need the toilet when they need it and don't, really can't wait. So I think that's something we need to try and follow up with.
Well, they're trying to get the Wellington Centre toilets open as soon as possible, but we've heard nothing yet.
No.
There's also been there's new traffic and pedestrian management schemes are expected to be put in place by Hampshire County Council on Victoria Road and Station Road. And yeah.
So have you had any feedback from residents? I know, Keith, you put something on here for North Town asking for feedback on how residents have found it. What was the general response?
Thanks, Gaynor. Yeah, it was fairly positive. I think people understood the queuing. I mean, to some people it was fine. I think to others they said it was a bit chaotic, but by and large it seemed to be easily understood and successful. The biggest gripe from residents was the lack of public lavatories. But of course the public lavatories in the town centre are in the Wellington Centre, which are owned by the Wellington Centre Management Company rather than Rushmoor. And understandably, they are continuing to keep the toilets closed because I think the lack of the inability to continually be cleaning them. But I think that is a frustration and a worry for certain people. But by and large, the layout seemed to be working successfully. But I popped up there in the week, but it was very quiet. But we will be going as a family to Lidl's later, so we'll see what it's like later today.
I'll go to the loo before you go.
Yeah. At my age, that's always a thing anyway. But
I just welcome Mike. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mike?
Yeah, Mike Roberts. This is my 10th Zoom in 3.5 days, and I've got another one with a London group, which includes the Granville people, about 11 o'clock. So this is a normal Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's good that we have all this access to meetings we wouldn't maybe normally go to, or we'd have to travel to. But yeah, it does get quite a lot to keep up with. Yeah, talking about the town centre, I don't know if some of the other councillors are aware about what's going on with the parking. It's my understanding that Rushmoor car parks are remaining free at the moment, and that enforcement officers are back out and about, but won't be at the moment issuing tickets. It's warning, concentrating on poor parking and parking on double yellow lines. Does anybody else know anything about any more information on that? Clive, did you have anything?
Just one or two things at the moment. On double yellow lines and enforcement for loading bays and such like. The enforcement officers are going round. They're going to put warning notices on, but they're not going to actually issue fines at this moment in time. But they will be warned if they get caught more than once, then they will be fining them. But at this moment, it's still free parking within the Rushmoor car parks.
Yeah.
On the other, I've got a question on the toilets. Are the disabled toilets opened, or is it all of them that are closed?
That's a good question.
Don't know.
Yeah.
My understanding is the disabled are closed as well, but yeah, wouldn't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure.
Can I come in? No, they are closed.
Yeah,
That's why I can't go out as well.
Yeah, it is. It's really restrictive for a lot of people. And I know, Keith was having a little bit of a joke there, but, for men with certain issues, when they, particularly when they get older, it does count. I mean, my stepfather had bladder cancer, and, one of the first signs he couldn't, he literally couldn't wait to go to the toilet when he was out and had to go frequently. So he would be severely restricted from going out.
Joking apart, it can be a real embarrassment. It can be a real embarrassment.
I think just to come in on that particular point, people will know that the toilets at the bus station have been closed. They are completely unfit, which is why they were closed. And yes, Aldershot is a tremendous problem. I've had, let's say, representations from everybody you would think, disabled, elderly, and it's been going on for weeks. When is something going to be done about Aldershot? We are always in a queue, and we go from one queue to another queue to another queue. And unlike Farnborough, where the Meads toilets are open, there is nothing at all unless you go to Morrison's. And it's a question of, the Morrison's people there can actually say, well, sorry, these are not public toilets. They are for Morrison's customers. And
you do have
Tesco's exactly the same, The other thing, commented on the parking, this is the bête noire at the moment. The amount of parking, irregular parking going on in the wrong places deliberately so, is just unbelievable at this particular point in time. You've got young people parking in disabled parking areas, much to the annoyance of people who have got a disabled need. Short Street is a good example of that. I came across the other week 2 cars parked. I think people know the word of mouth, where that is in High Street. And there were 2 cars parked on the pedestrian area outside with the word of mouth, not even in the car parking places. And it goes on like that repeatedly. The other bête noire is the gap, what I call the gap in Victoria Road, which the buses and legitimate vehicles should only be using. The amount of vehicles which come down there at 30, 40, maybe even further faster, it's just unbelievable. I don't know how much money we are losing, in quotes, from not having parking, but being paid for. But it's not something that can go on indefinitely.
No, it isn't. And that's it. I Hester has just asked a question about when it will be free too. So when it's going to be charged again. I don't think there's any word on that yet, is there? It's just
not at all. Not at all.
No.
Yeah, I mean, if I can pick up a little bit there, Mike and Gaynor, having been in some discussions with the leader and the cabinet informally, I think there are dividing views on how long to keep the free parking going for, because as Mike rightly says, every day that they're not collecting revenue, it does make the gap in the council's finances bigger. But there is also a school of thought that it would be wrong to implement the charge literally as soon as all the shops open. So I wouldn't expect it to last more than a few more weeks, put it that way. It's not indefinite. I think Cabinet will have to close. We'll have to make a decision, because, as Mike said, if they don't close the gap, they've got to find the money from somewhere else. But I see Waverley have introduced it literally from today. So yeah.
So we're doing quite well over here in terms of residents getting some free parking for a little while.
Yeah, but as Mike said, I wouldn't bank on it for too long.
No.
Yeah, I thought it would have been time to on Monday the concessionary fares were back to normal on the buses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before then, you could be a orange or blue person. You can get on the bus at any time. But I would have thought that would have been the appropriate time, as the non-essential shops were opening. And if it's not this month, you know, if you have July the 4th with the next big push on the hospitality sector, question mark, coming on stream, then you have to, I think, come forward with a date for more regularisation, because the more people get away and think, oh, well, they can't be bothered, and the more irregular parking that goes on, which is just unbelievable at the moment, safety-wise and whatever, then it's going to be hard to put the genie back in the bottle again.
It is, and actually I was quite glad to hear that the enforcement officers wouldn't be spending their time going around the car parks, and because actually I feel that they should be spending a lot more time, or should have more officers who are spending time dealing with those who are parking dangerously on our roads and at the junctions and on yellow lines. So
yeah, I think
it's a shame that won't continue.
Abuse of on-street parking is dreadful, and as someone that's now the partner of a blue badge holder, it's incredibly frustrating to go, as Mike would say, to Short Street or to somewhere else, and people are just illegally parking, or parking on yellow lines, and without talking about moving from town centres but to schools, people have been ignoring the yellow lines, the zigzag outside schools of the last couple of weeks.
Is that Sarah has something to say on it?
Well, she gets very cross when cars park on the yellow line.
I know, she's agreeing with you there. It's very frustrating when she goes out for a walk.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, lovely. So need to move on to just an update from our wards, what's happening in different areas. So if we start over with our colleagues in Farnborough and Cherrywood, any updates for us? Terry, if you're going to speak, you need to put your microphone on.
Did you want to go first on this, Christine?
Hang on, who did you say?
Cherrywood.
Right.
So yeah, ours has still been the normal fly tipping. Well, very high increase at the moment of cars being broken into, especially for their catalytic converters, being jacked
with what,
up.
Christine? Is there problems with?
With the fly tipping, and we're having a real high increase of cars being broken into, but also cars being jacked up for their catalytic converters.
Blimey.
Very valuable.
Yes, there seems to be a pattern at the moment of every Tuesday that roads are getting hit. So this Tuesday we had around the Cherrywood Road area, and then the Tuesday before was in the Grange area of Moor Road, etc. But yeah, so they seem to be targeting that at the moment. Real high amount of bike theft yet again. It's just continuing. There is a lot of frustration actually at the moment from residents, because some of it is being caught on CCTV, and they're handing it into the police, but the police are just coming back and saying case closed. So yeah, residents are getting really frustrated at the moment. So we're trying to speak to the police and see if more can actually be done. We definitely need more police presence. That is quite often the trouble.
Yeah.
As we know, there isn't enough police still.
No, there does definitely seem to have been an increase across the borough in petty crime, and it just makes you wonder why that is, whether it's to do with people suffering financially because of the pandemic, or that they've got more time on their hands. I don't know. It could be
boredom.
Definitely.
On that subject, Gaynor, I'd just like to say, it seems to be an ideal opportunity for people that normally commit the crimes to come out even more now because of what's happening. And the bikes seem to be used very much on our local drug dealing there because of the way our estates worked out. Alleyways in short distance, not viable for cars, but very viable for push bikes and such like. So it seems to be down that line. Fly timming, as Christina said before, is getting quite prolific around the area. I just missed a couple yesterday where there was some work going on, one of the houses, and this couple came by. The chap disappeared for about 5 minutes. I thought it was a bit odd. So I walked up to where he disappeared to, and he'd thrown a scooter in the bushes. But by the time I looked round, they were gone. So it just shows you that people being very inconsiderate, and it can be picked up and hidden. So we got to keep on top of the fly tipping. Also in the parks, it's a matter of having a presence around then to make sure that people actually pick up their litter and take it home with them, and supply more bin collections, I think, because the bins are getting overflowing at this moment in time.
Yes, I know that is something that we keep inquiring about, isn't it, when they're going to be going back to normal with the bin deliveries. How have you found the appointment system is working in Farnborough, Clive, for the recycling centre? And
well, at this moment in time, as it's on later on in the agenda, but I found that most people are quite happy with it. They're a little bit frustrated with the amount of people that can go in at a time, but they do like the idea that they don't have to wait for 2 hours in a queue, which is very good. But I know it's a little bit more awkward with your Northtown one, but the one in Farnborough, we've got quite a few 2-level type bins there, and they could actually increase the number they allow in. But that's the main complaint from our residents. But the link is never great, doesn't work properly, and they even actually state at times that there's no spaces available at Farnborough. But if you phone up on the phone line, you find you can get a space. So,
yeah.
And we've noticed a couple of our residents have actually gone over to Aldershot one because the link says there's no spaces available.
Yes, I had seen that as well. So yeah, probably best if you can to phone up, or if you go online and it says there's none, phone up because there may be something available.
Yeah, all
all
the residents I've spoken to, I've been saying no, phone. There are appointments available. Just phone rather than try and book it online.
And I think that our feedback in Northtown has been very positive, really, just with a couple of exceptions. Unfortunately, people have had to wait longer than they thought, but the majority seem to be very happy with the system and going through. I believe that you can only book 2 days ahead. Is that right? Do you know, Keith?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I tried from when I thought was day one, which was a week ago, and after 2 or 3 abortive attempts, we got a slot for Thursday and at 3:30, and I must say, I mean, it worked incredibly well. There and back within half an hour. There were 2 cars in front of me. I think there were 3 slots every 15 minutes or something like that, and it worked very well. Whereas I'd gone a week before and queued for over an hour. I was speaking to the guys on the gate there, and they were saying up until Thursday evening they had been allowing people in who hadn't made appointments because some people were completely unaware, but they were making them wait until that slot had been completed, then they would let them in. So some of those people maybe have been waiting an hour or 2, but they weren't impacting on traffic. But no, it worked very well. I mean, it's a bit like trying to get a doctor's appointment. It's that And at the moment, I don't think we've quite mastered when the slots go live online, because if you know that, then there'll be a surge. But actually, once you've got the appointment, the whole process went very smoothly. But the problem with Ivy Road being so small, and this is where the complaints have come from, which you sort of hinted at, Gaynor, was that if a lorry comes in to empty or replace a skip, that can take something like 20 minutes, which then screws up the booking process, and it takes a little while to catch up.
That's it. So if you're lucky enough for that to happen during your appointment slot, you will wait a little longer.
But it's the issue,
then again, not as long as you would have done if there was no appointments.
Yeah. And for the businesses there that had been impacted, for staff going to work and for deliveries, that issue has been resolved, which is good for them.
They're very happy about that, so that's good.
So you noted also that you can only make one appointment in any 1 week.
Yeah.
Ah, good. I didn't know that, Clive. That's interesting.
Just to say as well that remind people, Hampshire's website's actually having maintenance this weekend, so you can't actually book any appointments this weekend.
As ever with Hampshire, that's brilliant, isn't it?
But hopefully what they are doing is hopefully making the system better for when they reopen on Monday.
Yes, hopefully. Let's be generous. I suppose it's better than it happening during the week.
Yeah,
I guess. Right, so actually we got lots from Cherrywood. So on to Aldershot Park. Anything, Terry and Mike from Aldershot Park?
Well, I think we can say it's quite lively down there. In fact, it's beginning to be so lively, particularly with Aldershot Park itself. We've always had issues there of drug dealing, but the antisocial behaviour has just gone into another level, and there are very great concerns about the type of nature of the antisocial behaviour as well. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because there is a top-level meeting next week with the police and everybody to actually thrash out a much more, positive response to those particular area issues before us at this particular time at the moment. And I think local residents will be very much aware of the details. But I think it'd be better if I didn't say too much about that at this stage. There have been other notifications of another group of young people, not the same, they're not young people anyhow, they're much older than young people. They're over 18s who've been causing the problems elsewhere, who have been going into gardens at particular times of the early morning and ripping flowers and whatever on Cherrywood Estate, which is not very conducive. So I think those are other issues which have got to be tackled. Overall, the dumping has occurred, but we managed to keep on top of all that. Myself and Sophie sometimes come to the same conclusions. We go around differently, and sometimes that is a benefit, because if you can both see the same problem, like for example the mattress dump between Malden Road and Gloucester Road, in that pathway, the white mattress was something that we both reported and said, right, that obviously means that should be picked up and not left, because it's set in such a prominent place. So if you regularly work with people, they either tell you or you see and you deal with it. I think that is positive on that side. We're picking up more and more cases relating to where social services need to be involved. I've got a good working, having been a senior member of the County Council, I've got a good working relationship with, and also involved with Home Start, a good working relationship with the manager there now. And we get very good, obviously highly confidential feedback about what is happening on particular cases. And I know Sophie, in the work that she was doing for the ACR
Park, yes.
She picked up another case of her owner occupier yesterday, which is not all that far away on Tice's Meadow from another case we've got a similar problem with, which is a vivid case. And that, you know, will be looked at and dealt with in the ways between all the bodies, both at Rushmoor, Hampshire, and whatever we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly say from working with ARC that a lot it has brought to light, this pandemic, and the on-the-ground volunteering as well, which is really helpful, has brought to light a lot of cases of people hidden cases of people really needing support, whether it be with mental health, with family issues, with living conditions, all sorts of things, and actually a lot of it, as you say, has come up in Aldershot Park, being one of the wards with the greatest amount of deprivation across the borough.
Yeah, well, at least two of the local councillors actually grew up there, so there is a lot of pressure points there now on issues, and from income to social need, support, and all the rest. And what I try to do every new case I get or referred, I do a profile, get a profile done, and see where the missing gaps are. And you know, it's becoming much more of a problem, and we haven't actually got any plug into the food bank at this particular point in time. We don't know where it exists, but I was getting as the vouchers for people, but that seems to have stopped. So I think there is a need, identified need, that people are going hungry. Families, particularly we go with young people on the breadline, are having a problem. And I'm going to say this. I know Terry's a Manchester United fan, but I'm glad Rashford did what he did, because you know, one of the problems we always have with areas like Cherrywood, North Town, Town Centre, and whatever, and Aldershot Park, is the summer breaks. The Christmas breaks. You know, there are families there who are desperate for food.
And we talked about this at the surgery last week, didn't we? And I'm glad to see that the government have done the right thing and done a U-turn on the vouchers. But it's a shame that it took a Premier League footballer bringing it up and
who grew up with all those pressures. So he knew what it was like.
Yeah. I think the key is.
You see, Mike and I can. Sorry.
That's okay. Let's carry on a moment, Terry, because you need to update us on your part of the ward.
Okay, well, I'm glad to see Mike from the Mark Rashford, and of course he's right. We both, like Marcus Rashford, experience the problems we're dealing with. A couple of points there. There's a problem with dumping who claim responsibility for clearing it up. And you're in a bind between the Hampshire County Council, the Rushmoor Borough Council, and private ownership as to whose responsibility is. So that doesn't help the situation. As to crime and antisocial behaviour in general, we have had some representatives from some of our constituents, and on Tuesday, one of them, along with Sophie and I, had a Zoom conference with Sean Lahane, who's the area coordinator for Neighbourhood Watch, and they're getting together to try to form Neighbourhood Watch in the ward. The problem is, because of the size and shape of the ward, it would probably need 3 or 4 such organisations to cover the whole ward. But they are at least exploring the possibilities.
Yeah, definitely worth looking at, considering the increase, like we say, in petty crime. So, Keith, you wanted to say something?
Well, only picking up on what all three of you were saying about Marcus Rashford and his life experiences, which led to his leading the campaign. And it says many things. What's wrong with Parliament at the moment? It's full of lots of well-meaning people, but not too many have had those life experiences. And I think it takes a personality that shames people in the government to do the U-turn. It's good they did the U-turn and credit for that, but it was a U-turn. but I think it also reflects that we have a parliament that doesn't. He's very supportive of when I speak today. Have a parliament that truly reflects the makeup of our country, and that's a problem that, not for this call, but we need to address.
Yeah. And like you say, ordinary working people, that's what we need in there as well.
Yeah.
Not people who are totally out of touch and don't understand.
Or too many people who are the grandchildren of the traditional working people.
Yes.
Who still believe they are working people. Anyway, discussion for another day, Gaynor.
I think we need to move on now to Wellington ward. So we have Nadia, yes. Any updates from Wellington?
I have an update on the parking that was implemented on 2 of the army estates, Cllrs and Waterloo. So I requested additional signage, and that's been reviewed and has been implemented. Also, there was a 2-week grace period starting from the 1st of June where no parking charge notices were going to be enforced, but that was up on Monday. Also, the scheme is a pilot scheme, and it'll run for 6 months, and then they're going to review other estates as well. So that's the latest update on that. And is Clive going to comment on the Union Street development?
Yes, I think that's coming a little later, so yeah, we'll leave that for 5 if that's okay. Yeah. Lovely, thanks Nadia. And Keith, we're Northtown. Anything else on the agenda that we haven't?
Picking up what everyone's been saying about antisocial behaviour in parks, and I know I'm aware of the meeting that Mike referred to, but it would be good there if the strategy they're adopting for Aldershot Park could be potentially rolled out in other parks, because all of them, and I know from our colleagues in Cherrywood, Moor Park, Ivy Fields and play areas, are all now become the magnet for groups of young people.
Yeah, and Green Park, is it? I hear as well.
Yeah, Greenway, yeah, which is closed for under 12-year-old children, like all play parks, but is become the magnet for teenagers. So it'd be good if that could be raised. But one of the good things this week, there have been a number of police arrests for alleged drug dealing. And this is the feedback, the result of feedback from neighbours phoning 101 or reporting via ourselves. And I know we all get reports how frustrating it is that nothing seems to happen. But this week it has, and there have been a number of arrests. And Gaynor and I have been able to pass on data and information that has led to those activities. And I know it's frustrating for residents that they don't hear anymore, but there have been some action this week, including in Coppice Square and Wagoners Walk. There have been a number of people seem to have been taken off into police vehicles, so we don't know any more than that. The traffic issues, as we said, of the recycling centre have been resolved as a result of the booking system, and normal service has been
quite reasonable as well.
Yeah, I was going to say you're closer to the action there than I am. That's McDonald's and KFC seem to have been okay, but parking, as more children have gone back to school, parking in schools has around schools become an issue, and the parking enforcement team did visit the Alderwood schools during the week, but they've still, as part of their town centre strategy, are still not issuing enforcement notices, which was slightly or PCNs, which was slightly irritating to the other parents around. But yeah, and I think again something that our colleagues in Aldershot Park have picked up is dumping in privately owned alleyways and boundaries, which people are starting to find out where they are, and you find more and more stuff being dumped there. But by and large, we've not had the fly tipping in Northtown that I think other wards have experienced. Thank you.
No, and I just to go back to your point about calling, information from residents dialing into 101. We've had a comment from Francis, a resident in Cherrywood, about potentially cars being broken into by an involvement of drugs and so on, and the fact that residents have been reporting it on 101, and then the police are saying that they haven't had any reports. Now, I know this is something that's come up previously, and when we've had the beat priority meetings, for example, and information back from residents who say this, and I don't know what you think, Keith, but quite often residents will put things online on Facebook groups and then not actually dial 101, or they have to wait so they don't get through, so the calls actually register.
Yeah.
Saying it's great, tell us and we'll feed things through, but please do dial or register it online on 10, with the police.
Yeah, I think that's really, really sound advice, because whenever we do send it in, and I'm sure Mike and the others get the same, but Karen, PC East or PCSO Blanchard will always say, please ask the residents to send it directly. But
yeah, because when for her point of view, she can't just go off certain places. It has to come through the system to give her the authority to go to different places. Time being short, and also the more something is registered or the more problems coming through from a certain area will raise that up in the police priorities if they know.
When they report to us, we always send them the link saying, please, you need to report this straight away to the police.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find online reporting's quicker and easier than waiting in the queue.
Yes, that is. So I usually recommend that.
It's really quick and
it is.
It's all noted down. Yeah.
Right. That's all of our research. So, Christine, I believe that you have some update for us on the coronavirus cases and spread within the ward, and what's going on with the support groups on the ground.
Yeah, so COVID-19, to start with the Vine. Vine Line have supported a record amount of clients through COVID-19. This week alone, a new record of 294 calls to help vulnerable and isolated residents from around Rushmoor and surrounding areas. This week's included 42 intensive calls of an hour or more. And in the last 12 weeks, Vine Line has registered an amazing 1,970 support calls, of those 352 being intensive over an hour. They've now cooked 3,378 home-cooked meals and done food packaging for families of 295. They are obviously always trying to fundraise and raise money for all the stuff they're doing, and so far from producing masks, they've been doing the face mask, which I think Sophie wore one a couple of weeks ago on here and showed us hers. They've raised £2,500 from that, thanks to the efforts of Joyce Bellwood and Jennifer Evans, who have been making them, and John Jerome of Edgar Jerome's in Aldershot, who supplied all the cotton clothing for them to make them. They're still available at £5 each and available in 4 different sizes, 2 children's sizes, 1 male and 1 female. But actually, what's good in our favour at the moment is the infection in Rushmoor, the infection rate. We have reached the 400 mark, although there has only been one case of COVID-19 infection recorded for residents in Rushmoor. And that was the week of the 12th to the 18th of June, and none since. So it stands at 400, but according to the data from the ONS, it was one that was previously added. So at the moment, we're hopefully, touch wood, looking good. We do need to remind people that, if they can wear a mask, please wear it. Obviously, there are people that can't. And obviously keep washing your hands. But it's really important that people stick to the rules of their social bubble and don't start mixing this. There seems to be a lot of mixed information where people are thinking, I'm seeing them today, they're my social bubble, and then tomorrow I can go and see a different family. It's really important that actually people don't do that. Once you've picked who your social bubble is, you can only stick to them. So yeah, June so far, the ONS have recorded 8 cases of COVID. However, that amount came up from a previous case that was added on the 15th of June. So touch wood, we're looking good at the moment. The COVID team for Cherrywood have had a quiet week. I think they've only had a few prescription runs. And so, yeah, we've got some leaflets we're going to be delivering again with the COVID phone numbers on. We just need to get some more photocopies done of them, and we're hoping to start delivering them next week to remind people of the numbers if they need help, because obviously the longer people are isolating, we're finding more mental health issues coming through where people are lonely and they need that contact of, you know, maybe it is just a quick phone call to see how they're okay, maybe needed for an hour a week, or, you know, just to have somebody to chat to, touch base with, you know, see if there's anything we can do to help them. But I personally have had an increase in referrals for food bank this week, but yeah, other than that, we're looking all right at the moment. We're just preparing really for a second wave, but at the moment, I believe they're looking at, they think the second wave is possibly going to come in September.
Mm. Yeah, I think, I mean, the same with ARC over in Aldershot. It's been a lot quieter, but it is quite often those cases who will need ongoing support anyway, and that have been picked up that we're continuing with. Yes, a fair number of prescription pickups are still going, which is good. But it is really, yes, we can't get too complacent. Things have settled down here when we did have a high number of cases, but it's settled down, and we do need to, as you say, Christine, concentrate on keeping the social distance, keeping, if you've got a bubble that you are part of, keeping to that, and definitely keeping up with the hand washing, hygiene, which is really important as well. Okay, that's lovely. Right, so
just one thing, the larder from the Church of Good Shepherd, they've had an increase in the last week of deliveries of food parcels, but most of that is follow-ups from previous ones, where because of the length of time they've been carrying on, and they've picked up the extras here and there because of the length of time. So they've been pretty busy this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that the food bank's probably going to continue to be busy for the foreseeable future, I would think. Yes, we've actually covered, unless there's anything else you needed to say, Keith, on the opening of the recycling centres and the appointment system. You need to switch your microphone on, Keith.
I think we've covered everything, Gaynor. I think we've picked it up in the various ward issues.
Yeah. So, Clive, I believe you have some information on the planning application with regards to the Union Street development.
Not too much at this moment in time. It's just that the first phase of the regeneration within Union Street is on the agenda for this week's forthcoming week on the development committee. And
which day is that on, Clive?
That's on Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
And I'd urge people to go to the websites and have a look at it and pass their comments on to us, because it's a very vital stage in this operation as such, and the buildings are going to be hopefully moving very quickly, but we need input from our local residents to see what their thoughts are as well, and taking into account it's on the agenda for Wednesday as soon as possible, please.
Right, so if anybody has any comments, they can contact any one of the councillors actually, and we'll make sure it gets to the people who are on development management.
That's correct, or do it direct if they can.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, we've pretty much covered antisocial behaviour, and the police, getting this information to the police and what their response is. So I think next we have an update from Keith on the Eagle Radio petition.
Yeah, thank you. Only to say that it has gone into the our media, over 5,000 signatures. It's one of a number of petitions across the country to retain local radio rather than regional radio. In many ways, it's the principle of having local and community radio rather than just pseudo national stations, really. So I have had a response from the MD of Boyer Radio, and he has invited me to a meeting. So I will arrange that in the next couple of weeks and see where we go from there. I think reality, it's just to make sure that whatever proposals they have does reflect links with local community, and ideally we continue with whichever part of the country you're in, but certainly for us, local radio broadcast from a local town and not from London or Birmingham with national presenters. But it certainly made an impact, and thank everyone for doing that. And we'll feed back after the meeting with them. But thank everyone for signing. Yeah.
And also, you have an update on Stagecoach, I believe.
Well, again, and colleagues, I'm sure from other wards will come in here, but Stagecoach, as part of the national guidelines or rules, as of last Monday, you had to not wear a face mask, but have your face covered if you went or used public transport. I'll be interested from anyone's experiences observing the Northtown bus stop. People seem to have their faces covered, but I have seen on social media people saying drivers allowing bus users to come on board and not query them. But again, you can if you have various medical conditions, there is a dispensation that you don't have to wear the face covering. But I'm interested in others. I mean, for example, I'm asthmatic, and I find wearing a face mask quite problematic. But I don't know if others got first-hand experience of using public transport this week.
I haven't got first-hand, but my mum uses the bus regularly to get to work in the morning, and she's able to wear a mask and does so. But she did have a conversation with one of the bus drivers one morning, and she said, I'm just curious, she said, because each morning people are getting on the bus without masks. She said, and I've noticed you're not asking, because I know people can produce ID to show that they don't need to wear a mask. But I've noticed you haven't asked to see anyone's. And she said, the bus driver turned around and said, no, we don't want the confrontation, and we're just leaving it to people whether they choose to do it or not.
Yeah, can I respond as
yes,
an incessant user of buses? Sometimes more than one bus in a course of an hour. Sometimes, I've had dialogue with Martin, who's the general manager on this particular situation, because some of the drivers are taking the easy option. They are not, if they are young people without a mask, they are not, the drivers are not challenging them. We've had people going into the tech college, the one at Boundary Road, because it's all one site these days. Yes, they may go upstairs, but they certainly don't have a mask on. And there certainly should be people who have that particular mask, and many others who are BAME people, elderly, following, including me. I have our old football scarf just to wind people up. It's a blue and white one, which as most people know, I'm not blue and white. And I use that as my face covering. But I did have one of the drivers who is very much on the ball, being who you are sometimes, and travelling very often. He knows who I am, and he said to me there were plainclothes police on the buses, and 2 people were fined £100 for not wearing a mask.
Mm.
I think that's good to hear, Mike, because I think it's the government are expecting putting huge responsibility on bus drivers.
Yeah.
I mean, and it would be very easy to get into conflict, wouldn't it? And that would screw up it would be upsetting for everyone on the bus and the driver in
particularly
particular.
when so many bus drivers and so on have actually died from COVID. We know that already. So there are things in place to try and protect them. If they have to get into conflicts, there's no guard on the bus anymore. So it's a matter of them having to come out of their protected area.
I think they're doing a great job, actually, and we should acknowledge that. But I think it's huge responsibility.
Cheers. Lovely. Right. So I see we have Halleh has joined us. Hi, Halleh. She can hear us.
She's probably muted.
She is muted. You're muted, Halleh, if you're trying to talk to us. So I was just wondering if she had any updates for us this week. Let's see. No. Don't know if you can you speak to Halleh Hash? You unmute her.
I'm afraid I can't unmute her. I can send her a request to unmute. I can say, please unmute yourself, but I suspect she has technical difficulties. So, which I have sent. I've sent requests to unmute.
Great, thanks. So in the meantime, while we're waiting to, it looks like she may be joining us.
Yes,
Hi, Halleh.
sorry, hello. Apology.
Did you have any update for us this week?
No, I did say because the lockdown is more or less over, or at least is easing down. I said what we will do is next week we will talk about local businesses. So
great!
This week. Sorry.
No, that's interesting. Anything else you'd like to add? Anything that you've come up against this week that you think how things are going? Have you been out shopping at all?
Well, I have been, and I have been to London actually. I had to go to London on Thursday, and I can say really London looks as it was before. There was a lot of people around, a lot of people shopping, and I can say the number of people who actually had the PPE was very limited. I would say probably less than 10 or so. So I think at least life in London seems to be back to normal. I was in High Street, Kensington, and it was very busy. A lot of shops were open, but I think restaurants were still not serving, and they were just giving food, takeaway.
Yeah. So no real social distancing and queuing for the shops or one-way systems or anything like we have.
Not that I noticed. I think London seems to have always been in its own bubble, but not that I have noticed. No, I don't know about the supermarkets. I didn't go. I just passed the shops, and yes, it wasn't probably shops. Maybe because I was there sort of first thing in the morning. If I was in the afternoon, maybe it was busier, but it was as normal. And the roads were busy, so in some ways it's good. Everything's back to normal, or at least getting back to normal. In another way is a shame that people are still not taking precaution, and they're not wearing masks, and they're not really observing that social distancing.
Yeah, that's really interesting to know the difference between what we're trying to put in place here and what's going on up in London, which obviously is a lot more difficult with much denser population up there.
It is, definitely, yes. Definitely.
Right, so we're coming to the end. Is there anything anybody desperately thought they needed to talk about before we finish off?
The only thing I will raise, because it's going to be looking at all the economic portents coming, and also taking on on board what Halleh said about London. We are slightly sleepwalking into the furlough situation at the moment. In our particular area, there's going to be a lot of people without a job very, very shortly. How much, how many, we don't know. But as that starts to unwind, quite dramatically. It's going to be a question of how up for it, not only our local authority but everybody else as well, into actually managing that situation. Some of the figures are pretty stark. Even with the increase, the bounce back quote of shopping, it was still minus 13% overall. But you know, we are talking about millions of people furloughed in one form or another, and that's not going to go on for a long period of time. And within the next few weeks, you know, the ride's going to get very rough.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Keith, go ahead.
Well, the impact on that, of course, is a huge strain on all the things we've spoken about today, which is, you know, the impact on family, on the individual, on society,
on mental health.
Then more people having more spare time, boredom, all those other issues, and so Mike's quite right. The knock-on effect of all that will impact not just that individual, not just the family, but the whole community. The lack of disposable income, boredom, antisocial behaviour. So we are at a crisis point, really, in both local and national politics at the moment.
And all we need is a second wave.
Yeah,
which is likely to come. The only postscript I do on that is that most people might be aware that 3 of the largest food factories, which supply many of the supermarkets, Rowan's, Two Sisters, and the other one, are basically all being closed at the moment. Cleckheaton, that's it, Cleckheaton, have all been closed because of a severe outbreak of COVID-19 amongst staff. Hundreds have been, been basically, under scrutiny at this stage about health and safety within those particular works. So if you see a note on next door, which I'm just going to add the Rowan one because that's a new one, you know, there might even be shortages. They are massive places, and there might even be food shortages coming up as well in the next few days.
Very concerning. Yes, Clive.
2 items really. I don't know if people noticed there's been a slight increase in rust sleepers in Aldershot and Farnborough. I have been assured that they're not actually homeless people.
No, they're not.
There have been people been coming in, and they've been coming from other areas as well. So it's not that they are what we would properly call rough sleepers. They're just coming there, and they are not homeless at this moment in time. On the other item, on the antisocial and youngsters in the parks, is that for this time of year, leading up to the summer break for them, the increase in the parks is not that unusual. It's just that it's come earlier now, and it's in line with what they expect at this time of year for sort of end of July, August, but it's just a month earlier.
Yeah, Christine, did you have anything you wanted to add? No? Good. Okay. Just to finish off, I would say you've mentioned about I think we've got Zara wanting to say something, is it, or is it Keith?
Thank you, Gaynor. Really about I'm sure we've all had the question on our Here For social media pages about the bin collections. Are they going to return to weekly collections? Both Clive Grattan and myself have been in dialogue with the cabinet on this. At the moment, it will retain the fortnightly collection because the fear really of going back to weekly collections and then there being a second spike and then having to go back to fortnightly. So I think they are in discussions with Serco. They are monitoring their absentee levels, but I think we will have to carry on with this for a few more weeks. There is a concern and awareness that food waste can cause problems for larger families, but we are asking the questions almost on a weekly basis. I think, Clive, you may have a bit more information because you've been speaking directly with the head of operations.
Yes, the food waste item is that they're looking at introducing it earlier to help cover the summer part, so there's not so much smells around. And also there was a hint that a possibility to go back for families of 4 people to actually go back to a large bin for on a temporary basis, because they do expect the second spike to hit us in September. And as Keith has said, they don't want to go back to weekly ones and then start it all over again, because if you go back to weekly collections, it might be alterations across the board through Rushmoor about what days your weekly collection will be on, and that could all change.
Okay, thanks for that. Yes, the only other thing I would say is we mentioned that we have development management or planning meeting this week, and we also have the full council meeting on Thursday evening, just to let people be aware that they can observe the full council meeting on Thursday. So if they go onto the Rushmoor website, you can find the minutes for the meeting, and you should also be able to find a link to be able to view the council meeting. Observers can't speak or take part, but you can certainly watch. It saves you coming along to the council offices and makes it a bit more accessible for everybody, as they are virtual meetings at the moment.
I think on that, Gaynor, I think council officers who monitor this have been pleasantly surprised by the number of people who have observed the meetings, and I think it is good to see, inverted commas, democracy in action from your own living room, really.
I think it is. I mean, as you'll know, we get few people come and observe the full council when it's in the council offices, unless they have some specific interest. This actually makes it a lot easier for people to actually see what goes on.
And I think it's probably easier to follow as well, because if you're in the public gallery, it's quite difficult to feel a part of the meeting. But watching it online, I think people feel it's a more intimate way of following the meeting. Yes,
so I'll certainly encourage people to join us. I mean, I think you can still view them online after the event, can't you, if you can't make it at the time? I think they're being put onto the website. So yes, encourage people to take a look and see what goes on in full council meetings. And now it's just down to me, I think, to say thank everybody, thank all of our councillors and visitors, Halleh and Esther and Hash as our producer and facilitator for all of this. So thank you to everybody, and we'll be back next week. In the meantime, if anybody has any issues, to contact your councillors, or if you have anything you'd like us to discuss on our future virtual surgeries, then get in touch and we'll see what we can do in discussing that on here. So thanks everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks everyone.
You have a good weekend.
Great.